A dazzling gala night, meant to be nothing more than a stage for million-dollar plans, became where a secret buried for 18 years erupted. Amidst crystal lights and elegant applause, a young woman dared to stand up and tell a story of resilience, injustice, and the yearning for change, only to discover that the father she had never known was sitting in the front row. Behind the shocking scandal lay not only personal pain, but also profound questions about prejudice, about the choice between silence and truth, between resentment and forgiveness. This is the story of a family torn apart by power, yet pieced back together by love and the belief that no one deserves to be left behind. In Amelia Okafor's memory, her first days at the University of London felt like a never-ending marathon. She studied, worked, and returned money to her family in Nigeria. Mornings were spent in lectures, afternoons waiting tables at a small cafe, and evenings buried in textbooks inside her cramped dorm room, where cold wind always seeped through the window. Amelia never had the luxury of daydreaming or letting herself drift. Every hour of her life translated into money, an electricity bill, a carton of milk for her younger sister, or a few pounds saved in case her mother fell ill. She first met Edward Whitmore during a class on international economics. He sat in the front row, his crisp white shirt and pale blue tie neatly knotted. The name Whitmore carried a weight that made people glance at him with a mix of respect and distance. After all, everyone knew he was the sole heir to Whitmore Holdings, a financial empire that had dominated Britain's markets for 3 generations. Edward was an untouchable figure for most students, part idol, part emblem of a world they could never enter. But then, for a moment, that boundary blurred. The professor asked a question about the impact of trade policies on immigrant labor communities. Instead of quoting the textbook, Edward turned toward Amelia, smiled, and said, "What do you think? You have lived experience I don't." The class fell silent, all eyes on Amelia, the quiet black student who always sat in the back, scribbling notes and rarely speaking. She hesitated, but Edward's gaze was steady, expectant, not condescending, not perfunctory, but sincerely curious. So she spoke. She told of her mother losing her job when a factory shut down and relocating to a place where labor was cheaper. Hercule drew a taxi 12 hours a day to feed 4 children. Of the price immigrant families paid to keep this economy running, Edward listened intently, jotting notes in a small leather-bound notebook. When she finished, he nodded and smiled. "Thank you. That's a lesson no textbook could teach." In that moment, an invisible thread was spun. They began studying together, and study sessions turned into long conversations. Amelia was astonished that Edward, with all his extravagant choices, would happily eat a cheap sandwich with her in the park. He spoke of family meetings where mergers were discussed as casually as desserts. She shared stories from the cafe, where customers often called her sister instead of bothering to remember her name. Edward never pitied her. He asked, he listened, and sometimes he sought her plain-spoken honesty. One evening by the library window, gazing at the stream of cars below, he sighed. "I feel like I live in a glass cage. People only see the Whitmore name, never Edward. But with you, I feel normal." Amelia laughed softly, tinged with irony. "Normal people don't have a chauffeur waiting outside." He shrugged. "Maybe, but chauffeur or not, I want to be here with you." And slowly, they fell in love. A love kept secret like a precious treasure. They feared Edward's family finding out, feared whispers branding Amelia a gold digger. Yet at art exhibitions where Edward patiently explained Turner and Constable, or at Brixton Market where Amelia introduced him to jollof rice from her homeland, they tasted pure happiness. On a freezing February night, snow thick on the rooftops, Edward held her hand in the tiny dorm room, looked into her eyes, and whispered, "I will marry you, Amelia. I will spend my life protecting you from the hardships you've endured. I promise." She believed him. His eyes held no trace of deceit. But happiness is fragile. By March, Amelia realized her period was late. At first, she blamed exam stress and endless shifts, but the morning nausea refused to let her deny it. She bought a test from a pharmacy near the station. When 2 red lines appeared in the damp bathroom, her heart trembled with fear and a strange joy. She placed a hand on her belly and whispered, "My child, I will protect you. I promise." All day her thoughts were on Edward. He would be shocked, yes, but then they would plan. They had spoken of marriage, of family. The baby was only arriving earlier than expected. She rehearsed a dozen times. "Edward, I have news. I'm pregnant." She imagined his eyes lighting up, his smile awkward but full of love. But she never got the chance to say those words. One Thursday morning after exams, Amelia went to Edward's room. The door was ajar, but inside it was empty. His clothes, books, even the small photo they had taken together gone. On the desk lay only a neatly folded note. "I'm sorry. My family has obligations I cannot escape. Forget me, Amelia. Live a beautiful life." Edward. Her hands shook, her vision blurred. The world collapsed. 3 days later, men in black suits appeared at her door. They introduced themselves as the Whitmore family's lawyers. Their voices were polite yet chilling. "If you attempt to contact Edward, it will be considered harassment, and should you make any claim concerning a child, understand we have every legal means to destroy your future. Our best advice, remain silent and move on with your life." Amelia froze. She had told no one about the pregnancy, yet they already knew. That night, she sat alone in her room, pillow damp with tears. There was no one to turn to. Her family in Nigeria was struggling to survive. Her friends were casual acquaintances at best. The only person she had ever trusted had vanished as if he had never existed. But when her hand rested on her belly, a new strength rose within her. "No one else needs to believe me," she whispered. "As long as you believe, we will write our own story." From that moment, Amelia knew she had to keep going. She was no longer the dreamy student at art exhibitions, no longer the girl who blushed at a tycoon's promises. Now she was a mother, and the child inside her would be why she stood tall against a world of injustice and prejudice. Love abandoned had shattered, but a new life was taking root from its ashes. Amelia did not know how long or hard the road ahead would be, but she was sure of one thing. Her love for her child would be stronger than any barrier society could erect. Amelia Okafor remembered that spring morning, when the first rays of sunlight slipped through the small window of her shabby flat and fell upon her tired face. Her belly was beginning to show, not enough for others to notice, but enough for each step to remind her of the life slowly forming. Every time her hand rested on her stomach, a warmth spread through her, a burden of responsibility, and the only comfort she had in her long nights of solitude. The following months were a blur of studying, working, and hiding her pregnancy from prying eyes. In lectures, she wore loose-fitting clothes to conceal her growing belly. At the cafe, she avoided long shifts on her feet, though it meant less pay. Friends occasionally asked questions, but Amelia smiled them away, deftly changing the subject. Rumors began to stir. Some sneered that she must have snared a wealthy boyfriend to rely on. Each word struck like a blade to her pride, but Amelia chose silence. She knew that explaining would only feed the gossip. More than anything, she had to protect her child from that cruelty. By 6 months, she moved out of the dorm to rent a small ground-floor room on the city's outskirts. The walls were peeling, the floorboards creaked with every step, but she found a fragile peace, away from curious eyes. When the town quieted at night, she sat by the window writing letters in a journal for the child she had yet to meet. Each page was filled with tender messages, as though she were telling her life story to a best friend, not yet born. "My child," she wrote, "I cannot give you a father, but I will give you every ounce of strength and love I have. We may not have much, but we will have each other, and that will be enough." Leona was born on a grey October morning. The labour lasted for hours, leaving Amelia nearly faint with exhaustion, but the instant a cry filled the air, all the pain dissolved. She looked at the tiny baby girl, dark skin, eyes tightly shut, a tiny hand wrapped firmly around her finger. Tears slid down Amelia's face, and she smiled for the first time in months. "Hello, Leona," she whispered. "Welcome to this world." Leona grew up in the arms of a resilient and tender mother. Her early years were shaped by Amelia's constant balancing act between work and study, cleaning jobs, dishwashing, babysitting, and night classes to finish the degree she had put on hold. Sometimes Amelia brought her daughter to class when she had no one else to watch her. Some days, Leona cried through lectures, drawing frowns from professors. Other days, the class chuckled as she babbled cheerfully during discussions. Poverty was ever present, a shadow that lingered. They lived in cheap apartments with mold-stained walls, freezing in the winter when the heating broke, stifling in the summer heat. Meals were often instant noodles, stale bread, or discounted produce bought at the end of the market day. Yet Amelia never let her daughter feel unloved. She read stories before bed, sang Nigerian folk songs, and taught her to count with the coins in her pocket. Leona showed promise early. She babbled, and by the time she entered kindergarten, she could read ahead of many classmates. Teachers praised her sharp mind and curiosity, often stumped by her questions. Amelia felt pride and fear. Intelligence was a gift, but it could be a burden without opportunity. One evening, when Leona was about 8, they read a fairy tale together. At the part where the princess searched for her father, Leona suddenly asked, "Mama, where's my dad? Why don't I have one like the other kids?" Amelia froze. She had rehearsed this conversation for years, yet her heart still ached. Stroking her daughter's soft curls, she took a deep breath. "Your father was once very important to me, but circumstances didn't allow him to stay. It's not your fault, and it's not mine. You are not missing anything because you and I have each other." Leona was quiet, then whispered, "Does he know about me?" Amelia kissed her forehead. "He doesn't. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that I know and love you more than anything." Leona nodded, sadness flickering briefly before her face brightened. "Then I'll have 2 roles. I'll be your daughter and your friend." The words brought Amelia to tears. Leona's teenage years were marked by struggle and triumph. She tutored peers, joined the school's business club, and even drafted her first plans for a consulting service to help small local shops. At 15, 16 years old, she was already mapping business models, calculating expenses, and learning to persuade clients. Amelia watched with astonishment and pride, but alongside pride was worry. Amelia knew the outside world would not easily embrace a young black girl, daughter of a single immigrant mother, trying to enter the ruthless business arena. Prejudice, suspicion, and malicious whispers awaited. Yet when she saw the determination in her daughter's eyes, Amelia knew she could not hold her back. One evening, over a simple dinner of pasta and vegetables, Leona looked up and said, "Mama, I want to do more. I want to help people like me, bright kids who never get a chance. I want them to have a voice in this world." Amelia set down her fork, studying her daughter. In that moment, she realized Leona was no longer just her child. She was becoming a woman with ideals, ambition, and strength that even Amelia had never dared to imagine. In Amelia's heart, a quiet hope blossomed. Perhaps Leona would rewrite the story she once thought ended forever. A tale not born of betrayal, but of hope. Hope a mother had planted in her child, now blooming into a force that could change the future. Amelia never forgot her delayed graduation ceremony. It took 6 years to finish a degree that should have taken 3, each term interrupted by months of relentless work to support her child. When her name was called, Leona was 2 years old, sitting in the audience with Amelia's friend Ruth Ndlovu, who had cradled her throughout the event. As Amelia walked the stage to receive her diploma, hands trembling, she looked down to see Leona clapping with wide, shining eyes. Dressed in a bright yellow second-hand dress Ruth had bought, she stood out among the crowd. Amelia's pride swelled so powerfully that tears fell unnoticed down her cheeks. That diploma was not hers alone. It belonged to them both, to every cold night endured, every coin saved, every dream that had survived. But reality remained unforgiving. Job hunting was more complicated than she imagined. Many firms rejected her for the years she had interrupted her studies. A few invited her for interviews, but upon seeing a black single mother, doors closed quickly behind polite words. "We believe another candidate is a better fit." So she took odd jobs, part-time bookkeeping for a corner shop, evening cleaning shifts in office buildings, tutoring international students. Some months, her earnings barely covered rent, leaving her and Leona with watery porridge instead of rice. Amelia never complained, but Leona noticed. At 10 years old, Leona asked, "Mama, why are you always so tired?" Amelia hugged her tightly, smiling, "I'm not tired. The moment I have you, I feel strong again." Leona shook her head, serious beyond her years. "One day I'll make money so you don't have to work this hard." Amelia laughed, but her heart ached. Her daughter carried the weight of her sacrifices too soon, yet she couldn't help but feel proud. In high school, Leona thrived academically and socially, but was also targeted. Some wealthy classmates mocked her plain clothes and worn shoes. When she was chosen to lead a project team, a boy sneered, "The teacher just pities you because you're poor." Leona came home fuming, slamming her notebook on the table. Amelia listened, then asked, "And how do you feel?" "It's unfair. I worked hard. I deserve it not because of pity." Amelia nodded. "Then prove it with results. Their words are fleeting. Your achievements are the truth." That advice became Leona's mantra. She worked harder, joined competitions, and won scholarships. At 16, she launched a small consulting service for local shops. She noticed many owners struggled with bookkeeping, promotion, or social media. It began with helping a corner store owner organize her accounts and create a Facebook page. Within months, word spread. Small shops, restaurants, and even family businesses sought her advice. They were amazed at the practical insights of a teenage girl who could help their revenue grow. Amelia worried at first, afraid her daughter was moving too fast. But each time Leona came home, waving her first hard-earned cash and shouting, "Mama, I made this with my mind," Amelia wanted to cry and hold her tight. One evening, they sat on a park bench after a long day. Amelia watched her daughter sketching ideas in her notebook, curls wild under the sunset. She realized Leona was no longer the tiny infant clinging to her finger in the hospital. She was becoming a strong, independent young woman, carrying all the hope Amelia had once whispered into her. Yet pride came with fear. Amelia knew the business world was ruthless, where power and money often outweighed talent and fairness. Could a girl like Leona truly carve a path? The answer was uncertain. But when Leona said, "Mama, I'm not doing this just for me. I want to prove that people like us belong too," Amelia knew she could no longer hold her back. All she could do was stand behind her daughter, a launchpad even if her wings were weary. Leona continued to excel. She won a full scholarship to a prestigious London university while expanding her consulting company. Referrals brought more clients. Even non-profits sought her advice. By 18, Leona had steady revenue and, more importantly, a reputation built on real talent and dedication. Amelia often watched her daughter working late, laptop glowing in their small flat, a cup of tea gone cold on the table. Pride surged through her. Leona had outgrown every limitation life had once forced upon them. And then, one night near 3 a.m., Amelia's old phone buzzed with a new email notification. It was from the organizers of a significant event. As she read, her heart pounded, her hands trembling. Leona had been selected as one of 5 young entrepreneurs to present at the Pinnacle Investment Gala, the most prestigious investment event of the year, hosted at Royal Lancaster Hall. She glanced at her daughter, asleep on the small bed, curls spread across the pillow, breathing softly. Joy and fear tangled inside her. Joy that her daughter's dream was opening wide before her. Fear that a past buried for 18 years might awaken. Amelia knew well who the gala's chief sponsor was, Whitmore Holdings, and the name Edward Whitmore, no matter how hard she had tried to forget, resounded like a tolling bell of pain in her heart. The email arrived at 2:47 a.m., when the city was still half asleep, and the only sound outside the window was the wind whistling through old buildings. Amelia was perched on the edge of her bed, sleepless, her mind wandering over how she would scrape together next month's rent. Her old phone buzzed with a dry ting. At first, she ignored it, but she reluctantly opened it, worried it might be urgent from the restaurant where she worked. The words on the screen made her read them 4 times, still unable to believe. "Dear Miss Amelia Okafor, we are delighted to inform you that you have been selected as one of 5 young entrepreneurs to present at this year's Pinnacle Investment Gala." Amelia froze, her hands trembling, her eyes blurred with tears. In that moment, she knew. The child she had once cradled in fragile arms 18 years ago was about to step onto a stage that others spent lifetimes striving to reach. She turned her head slightly. Leona was sleeping soundly, curls spread across the pillow, breathing steadily. Amelia watched her silently, pride swelling so fiercely it stole her breath. But then a chill ran down her spine. At the bottom of the email, one line struck like a dagger. Sponsored by Whitmore Holdings. That name cut into her memory like a blade. For 18 years, she had refused to speak it, refused even to think it except in those midnight hours when pain crept back, uninvited. Edward Whitmore. The man who had abandoned her in a cold dorm room with nothing but a lifeless note, leaving her to carry a pregnancy alone, to give birth alone, to raise Leona alone. For years, Amelia had believed she had sealed the past away. Yet it was back, towering over the brightest dream her daughter had ever dared to chase. The next morning, while Amelia struggled with the old coffee machine that needed a firm thump to work, Leona woke. Still groggy, she lit up the moment Amelia handed her the phone. "Mama," she squealed, almost bouncing out of bed. "Mama, I got in. The Pinnacle Gala. This is real. Do you know how many zeros the people there can sign onto a check? If I impress them, my company could get funding, hire staff, expand projects." She paced the tiny apartment like a bird testing its wings for the first time, words bursting like sparks, eyes alight, hands painting visions in the air. Amelia watched silently, pride and sorrow tangled in her chest. "They're giving me 15 minutes to present," Leona read on, "then a networking reception. Mama, it's a black tie event. That means evening gowns?" She faltered, glancing at the rickety wardrobe with its handful of second-hand dresses. The fire in her eyes dimmed. "Mama, I don't have anything to wear. Who will take me seriously if I show up in a borrowed or thrift store dress in a room full of power?" Amelia stepped forward, placing her hands on her daughter's shoulders. "You will shine because of your mind and your grit, Leona. A gown is only the shell. But don't worry, we'll find a way. We always do. Haven't we?" Leona smiled faintly and nodded. "Yes, we always do." Amelia smiled back, but inside her was a storm. The more she thought, the harder it was to keep Edward's name from clawing at her mind. Would he be at the gala? As CEO, almost certainly perhaps even delivering the opening speech. And if he saw Leona, her chest tightened. Leona's bright, intelligent eyes, the curve of her features, so much of Edward lived in her face. A man like him, with sharp memory and keenness, could he fail to recognize his daughter? That night, after Leona had gone to bed, Amelia sat alone by the window, sipping cold tea. Outside, the city pulsed with headlights streaking across rain-slick streets. She remembered the last time she saw Edward, the apology scrawled on a note in that empty dorm room. The memory had carved itself into her heart, a wound that had never closed. She had once loved him so deeply she believed nothing could break them. But that love had been crushed beneath the weight of the Whitmore family, leaving her to pick up shards alone. She had built a she from those Schleifses from Thoshards. Raising she fighting for Lafitte was thrusting her and Edward into the same room again, under the glare of chandeliers, with hundreds of eyes watching. The following 2 weeks turned their small apartment into a workshop. Leona practiced her speech in front of the mirror, then in front of her mother. Amelia scribbled notes, refined phrasing, and offered feedback. Together, they researched the attendees, dissected strengths and weaknesses, and strategized how Leona could stand out. Sometimes exhaustion overcame Leona. "Mama, I'm only 18. What will they think, some kid telling veterans how to do business?" Amelia held her hand, steady gaze meeting hers. "They'll think, here is a young woman with vision. You've lived what you're about to say. That is a strength many don't have. Remember, you built a company from scratch, earned clients, and created real change. Age is just a number. What matters is the value you bring." Her words poured strength back into Leona. She straightened and began practicing again. Amelia watched with pride and ache intermingled. While adjusting slides together one evening, Leona asked, "Mama, why do you seem worried lately? Is it money? If we need it, I can take on more clients to cover costs for the gala." Amelia startled, then shook her head. "No, don't worry. I'll handle the money. I'm just just thinking about what might happen there. So many powerful people, so many connections. Sometimes, places like that aren't welcoming to outsiders. Leona's smile was radiant. But Mama, that's exactly why I want to go. When will we ever have a voice if we all believe we don't belong? I want to stand there and prove that we do. Emotion swelled in Amelia's chest. Her daughter was more substantial and braver than she had ever dared to be. But the worry would not vanish. In her sleepless nights, Amelia pictured Edward's face catching sight of Leona. Would he recognize her? If he did, what would he do? Would he remain silent, or would he reach out? Would he shatter the fragile world Amelia had spent 18 years building? She had no answers. Only the certainty that time was racing toward them, each tick of the clock drawing them closer to the gala, night when past and present would collide, unstoppable. Edward Whitmore stood before the floor-to-ceiling glass, 40 stories above, gazing down at London as dusk descended. Streetlights flickered on, traffic streams pulsed like glowing arteries through the city. From this office, he often told himself, he could see the beating heart of a nation, its financial core, cultural veins, and political lifeblood. But tonight, the view meant nothing, just pinpricks of light in the void. At 40, Edward had everything the world once promised him. An economic empire spanning Europe and Asia, record profits, headlines praising him as a bold reformer and the model entrepreneur of the 21st century. Politicians courted him, universities invited him to lecture, and cameras swarmed his every appearance. Yet when night fell, the vast penthouse echoed only with silence, the hollow sound of solitude. For years, he believed work could fill the void. He hurled himself into deals, mega-projects, acquisitions, and philanthropic foundations. But the higher he climbed, the more he felt success could never patch the quiet emptiness within an emptiness that bore a name: Amelia Okafor. 18 years had passed since he left her, yet every morning he still woke, reaching unconsciously for the other side of the bed where warmth once lay. Each time he read reports on economic inequality, he recalled fierce debates with Amelia in the library, her insistence that profit charts masked real faces: laborers, immigrants, struggling families. She had taught him that behind elegant numbers lay brutal truths. He had betrayed that love not out of fading affection but cowardice. He remembered his father, Charles Whitmore, sitting in his grand study, sliding photographs across the desk, grainy shots of Edward and Amelia, and saying coldly, "You will end this. Otherwise, her family will lose everything. Do you want her mother without medicine, her sister pulled out of school, Amelia expelled from the university? One signature of mine, and it's done." Edward had been 22 and terrified. In panic, he chose disappearance, leaving only a hollow apology note. Since that day, he had lived with emptiness and regret. The office door creaked open, breaking his reverie. Oliver Grant, his longtime aide, entered with a folder in hand. "Sir, the list of speakers for this year's Pinnacle Gala," Oliver said, voice steady, though his eyes shone with anticipation. "Some of them are truly remarkable." Edward accepted the folder, sat at his desk, and forced focus. The gala had been his brainchild, an annual stage where promising young entrepreneurs could meet major investors. It expanded Whitmore Holdings' network while polishing its reputation for social responsibility. The first pages were predictable bright talents, but from familiar molds: wealthy heirs, elite university students, startups cushioned with capital. On the fourth page, Oliver paused, clearing his throat. "The youngest of the group," he said, "just 18, but already running a consulting firm with steady revenue. I think she deserves special attention." Edward's gaze dropped. The name printed in bold is Leona Okafor. His heart skipped. He reread the surname, Okafor, a name he had buried in the past, now glaring back like destiny itself. He scanned the file. Born 2004 and raised in London. Child of a single mother, Amelia Okafor. Edward's hands shook as he let the pages fall. "Sir, are you all right?" Oliver asked, concerned. Edward didn't answer immediately. The numbers in his mind lined themselves up. 2004, the year of Leona's birth. He had left Amelia in the summer of 2003, The timing matched perfectly. A shiver coursed down his spine. This was no coincidence. It could not be a coincidence. Forcing composure, he said, "Oliver, I want you to gather everything we can on this girl, but absolute discretion. No one else must know." Oliver hesitated, surprised, then nodded. Understood. When the door shut, Edward slumped forward, breath ragged. He hired people to search for Amelia for years, but she had vanished without a trace. He had dreamt of a little girl running on green lawns, eyes bright as fire. The dream haunted him, a question whispered in the dark. Did I leave a child behind? But he had never dared to believe. Now the truth stared him in the face. He rose, pacing. The walls gleamed with framed honors, medals, and photographs with heads of state, all suddenly meaningless. He had built an empire, but perhaps his most outstanding achievement was out there, a young 18-year-old woman, not forged by Whitmore's wealth, but by her resilience and the fierce love of the woman he had abandoned. The next afternoon, Oliver returned with a thick dossier. "I've compiled quite a bit," he said, placing it on the desk. Edward opened it, page by page. Stellar academic record, full scholarship, a consulting firm built from scratch, clients ranging from non-profits to small businesses. Notes scribbled on the side. The mother worked multiple jobs, cleaning, serving, tutoring, and there is no record of a father. He reached the final page, a photo of Leona speaking at a university forum. Her smile radiant, her eyes alight, her cheekbones sharp, familiar yet new. In a flash, he saw his youth and Amelia's proud stance. He set the photo down, throat tight. No longer a suspicion. This was the truth. Leona was his daughter. Regret crashed over him like a tidal wave. Amelia had borne the weight alone for 18 years, while he, the father, the man who once swore to protect, had vanished, leaving her to fight the world. The calluses on her hands, the sleepless nights, the endless jobs he had forced them on her. His phone buzzed. A message from Charlotte Harrington, his current fiancée, reminding him of that evening's family dinner. He stared at the screen, overcome with estrangement. Charlotte was beautiful, pedigreed, brilliant, and ambitious, the perfect match in the eyes of high society. But reading her words, he felt nothing but emptiness. His heart had never let go. It had always belonged to Amelia. And now she had given him a gift. He did not deserve a daughter. Edward turned back to the window. London's lights glittered below like a sea of stars. Only one question thundered in his mind. How can I atone? How can I step into their lives when I was the one who shattered them? The answer would not wait long. The pinnacle gala was days away. And there, under the chandeliers, before Amelia's eyes and before a daughter who had never known him, Edward would have to face the truth. The days slipped by faster than Amelia had expected. 2 weeks to the gala had seemed long, but suddenly fewer than 5 days were left. Each morning, Leona rose early, sitting before her laptop to rehearse her presentation. She spoke with the fire of 18, adjusting slides, scribbling new ideas into her notes. When Amelia returned from cleaning shifts at night, she found her daughters still at the screen, eyes glowing in the dim room. "Mama, listen to this opening," Leona said eagerly, pressing a key and launching into her speech. Amelia sat and listened. Leona's voice was steady, confident. She spoke of small businesses overlooked by the market, of how her consulting firm had helped them find a voice. It was persuasive, full of conviction. When she finished, Amelia nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. "You're wonderful, Leona," she whispered, her voice trembling. "If you keep that spirit, the entire hall will have no choice but to listen." Yet beneath her pride, Amelia's worry deepened, not about Leona's words, but the shadow of the past waiting at the end of this path. One afternoon, they visited a charity shop near the station for a gown. Leona sifted through racks, eyes hopeful yet tinged with disappointment. The dresses were worn, outdated, or the wrong size. "Black tie, Mama," Leona murmured. "Everyone will be in designer gowns. If I wear one of these..." Amelia placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll find one. And if not, I'll alter it. You'll look beautiful and strong, I promise." At last, Leona paused before a simple black dress. The fabric was a little tired, but the cut was elegant. Amelia held it against her daughter's frame. It fit, almost miraculously. "This is it," Amelia whispered. "Just a few stitches, and you'll shine." Leona turned before the mirror, hope brightening her face. "You really think it's good enough?" "Better than good enough," Amelia said firmly. "They won't notice the dress. They'll see your mind, your strength." They brought it home. That night, Amelia took needle and thread, mending each seam, memories pricking her like thorns, and mending shirts for Edward long ago after he had torn them in haste. She pushed the thought aside. This was for Leona, not for him. The following days, their small apartment pulsed with preparation. Leona rehearsed until her voice grew hoarse, then rehearsed again. She experimented with hairstyles and tried on the only borrowed heels she could find. They were too tall, but it was the only option. Amelia calculated every penny, bus fare, a little makeup compact, to help Leona feel confident under the lights. When night fell, and Leona slept, Amelia sat at the kitchen table, staring at the printed invitation. The words, "Sponsored by Whitmore Holdings," made her hands tremble. He would be there. After 18 years, she would have to meet the eyes of the man who once swore never to leave her. One evening, Leona looked up and studied her over a simple pasta dinner. "Mama, you've been distant lately. Is something wrong?" Amelia froze, chopsticks suspended. "No, I'm just worried for you." "That's not it," Leona said slowly. "I can feel it. You're afraid of this Gala." "Why?" Amelia set the chopsticks down, steadying her breath. "It's just places like that, you know, so full of power. I worry they'll see you as too young or judge you for where you come from." Leona tilted her head, eyes sharp, piercing. "Or is it because of the name Whitmore Holdings?" Amelia stiffened. Her daughter had noticed. "You knew someone there, didn't you?" Leona pressed. Amelia drew a slow breath, choosing her words. "Yes. When I was in university, I knew someone very close. But his family disapproved. He left. It's the past, not worth remembering." Leona was silent for a long time, then nodded. "I see. But Mama, that's history. I want this gala to be about now, about the future. I want to step on that stage because of what I have done, not because of anyone else." Amelia's heart twisted, yet loosened at the same time. Leona didn't know the truth, but at least she understood. The past should not dictate her dreams. As the gala drew closer, Amelia's nerves tightened. She fretted over every detail. Would the dress hold? Would the heels trip her? Would the speech pierce through the skepticism of wealthy men? Yet, Leona grew calmer, as if the pressure only steeled her resolve. On the final night, they sat together on their worn sofa. Leona rested her head on her mother's shoulder, her voice trembling yet resolute. "Mama, no matter what happens tomorrow, whether they invest or not, I want you to know everything I've achieved is because of you. I'll never forget that." Amelia squeezed her daughter's hand, her chest aching. At that moment, she didn't know what was awaiting them the next day. But she knew one truth. Whatever came, whoever they faced, no past could make them stand alone. Royal Lancaster Hall blazed like a palace at the heart of London. From afar, spotlights pierced the misty sky, forming luminous pillars as though guiding the way into another world. A world of power, wealth, and prestige. Luxury cars lined up before the red carpet. Gentlemen in tuxedos handed their coats to attendants, while ladies in shimmering gowns glided forward, as if each step had been choreographed for a performance. Amelia clasped Leona's hand tightly as they stepped out of the old taxi, paid for with weeks of savings. Leona's dress, though second-hand and carefully altered by Amelia, looked elegant, almost regal in its simplicity. Her curls were swept into a neat bun, her face touched with light makeup, her eyes shining with determination. For a fleeting moment, Amelia felt as though she were looking at a grown version of herself, yet stronger, more radiant, more assured. "Mama, look at this place," Leona whispered as they entered. The grand hall glittered with chandeliers, its polished wood-paneled walls and richly patterned carpets exuding opulence. Laughter, the clink of champagne glasses, and the click of heels on marble filled the air. Amelia felt like an intruder stumbling into someone else's dream. But when she saw Leona walking tall, eyes alive with curiosity and excitement, She drew a deep breath. "You belong here," Amelia said firmly. "Never think otherwise." Leona squeezed her hand, smiling. The event coordinator approached with a warm greeting. "Miss Okafor, we're thrilled to have you. You'll be presenting last, the highlight slot. Please be ready." Leona nodded, her face glowing. Amelia thanked politely, though her stomach twisted, for she had already seen the name printed on the program at the entrance hall. Edward Whitmore, Chairman and CEO of Whitmore Holdings, event sponsor. Across the hall, Edward stood among investors, the picture of confidence, each gesture practiced, each word polished. Yet to him, the chatter was only noise. From the moment he had seen the name Leona Okafor on the list, he knew this night would come. And now, as his eyes caught a young woman in a simple black gown beside a woman he recognized instantly, his chest tightened painfully. Amelia, 18 years had not dulled her. Lines traced her face, her eyes bore the weariness of battles fought, but her proud stance and steady gaze were still her. Beside her stood a young woman, radiant smile, unwavering eyes. Edward didn't need anyone to tell him. He knew at once. That was his daughter. He forced himself not to move toward them. This was her night, not his. But with each pounding heartbeat, Edward knew his silence could not last much longer. One by one, the speakers took the stage. Their polished, heavy presentations with financial jargon were met with polite applause. Leona sat waiting, notes in hand, breathing deeply. Amelia sat just behind, eyes fixed on her. Then the moment arrived. The host's voice rang out. "And now, our youngest speaker tonight, a testament that age is no barrier to vision. Please welcome Leona Okafor." The spotlight fell. Leona rose, the black dress flowing gently, her steps steady. Amelia held her breath. In the hush of the hall, Leona began. "Good evening. My name is Leona Okafor, and I want to speak to you about the difference between merely existing and building something that lasts." Her voice rang clear, resonant with strength. She spoke of her childhood, watching her mother juggle 3 jobs to pay rent. She spoke of small businesses fading not for lack of talent, but for lack of support and recognition. She spoke of founding her firm to fill that gap, to give the overlooked a real chance. The hall was so silent that one could hear the audience's breathing. Leona's eyes blazed. Her hand moved gracefully to emphasize each point. Behind her, numbers, charts, and concrete examples lit the screen proof of real results. Tears streaked Amelia's face. This was her daughter, not the child she once cradled, but a young woman commanding a hall of power. Far across the room, Edward rose to his feet, driven by instinct. Every word Leona spoke was both blade and balm. Agony, for the 18 years he had lost. Pride, for seeing his own blood blaze like fire. His tears broke free. When Leona concluded, "Investing in people like us is not charity. It is a smart decision, because untapped potential is the greatest resource you've yet to imagine." The hall erupted in thunderous applause. Some even stood. Edward was the first. He clapped until his palms burned, unable to stop, pouring love, pride, and regret into each strike. Leona bowed, cheeks flushed. In the dazzling light, her eyes swept the crowd. She caught sight of Amelia, smiling through tears, and then just for a second her gaze landed on a man near the front, clapping with fierce intensity, face unguarded in raw emotion. She faltered, her heart hammering. The man was a stranger, yet something about him felt uncannily familiar, as though she were staring into a distorted mirror of herself. Amelia saw the moment, and her heart clenched. She knew. The fateful collision had begun. Soft music floated through the grand reception hall of Royal Lancaster Hall. After the presentations, guests streamed in with champagne glasses sparkling under the chandeliers, conversation buzzing everywhere. This was the moment many young entrepreneurs had longed for, the chance to shake hands with investors, exchange cards, and forge connections. Leona was still lightheaded. She had just lived through the most critical moment of her life, and the response from the audience had surpassed every expectation. People crowded around her with compliments, questions, and a genuine interest in her firm. A few investors even voiced serious intent. Leona scribbled notes, her heart pounding like the world opened wide before her. Amelia hovered nearby, watching, guarding. She saw joy in her daughter's eyes, the joy she had never tasted, but worry gnawed at her. Somewhere in this hall, Edward Whitmore was present, and she knew, sooner or later, they would collide. Immaculate in his tailored tuxedo, Edward cut through the crowd like a king among courtiers. But within, he was anything but calm. Each glimpse of Leona, her smile, her poise, her fiery eyes squeezed his chest tighter. Pride, regret, and paternal love surged like a storm tide. He stopped just a few steps away. The group clustered around Leona instinctively shifted back, recognizing the presence of power. Edward Whitmore was not merely the host in this world, he was authority itself. "Miss Okafor," Edward's voice rang deep and commanding. Leona looked up, startled. His face, like the shadow of a man her mother had once vaguely mentioned, stirred something she could not name, yet she remained composed. "Mr. Whitmore, thank you for this opportunity tonight." He took the hand she extended, just a brief touch, but to him it was blinding. Those fingers, once tiny in his dreams, now steady in the grasp of a young woman. "The opportunity is ours," Edward said, his gaze fixed on her. "You've given us all a lesson." Leona blushed faintly and smiled, but before she could reply, Edward spoke words he could no longer restrain. "You look so much like your mother." The air around them stilled. Leona blinked. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" From a distance, Amelia pushed forward quickly, her voice trembling. "Leona, we should." But Edward had lost control. 18 years of regret, searching, and watching his daughter shine before him, it all burst out. His voice carried, clear enough for the entire circle around them to hear. "Your birthday, April 2004, 37 weeks after I left university. Leona, I am your father." Conversations froze. Glasses hovered midair. The room seemed to stop spinning. Leona stood rooted. The words thundered like lightning, cracking her world apart. "You? What did you just say?" Her voice shook. Edward met her eyes, unwavering. "I have searched for you for 18 years. I made the mistake of leaving your mother. But you are my flesh and blood." Amelia forced her way in, her face pale. "Edward, stop. Not here. Not now." But he shook his head, voice breaking yet resolute. "Amelia, I've been silent too long. I cannot let another second pass without acknowledging Leona as my daughter." The crowd stirred into a frenzy. Whispers cascaded. Whitmore's secret child, 18 years, hidden all this time. A few reporters, invited as observers, had already raised their phones, cameras flashing like lightning. Leona staggered back, as if the floor had cracked beneath her. She turned to Amelia, eyes wide with anguish. "Mama, is it true?" Amelia froze, her heart shattering. She had meant to tell her daughter in a safer moment one day. But now, with hundreds of eyes fixed on them, there was no escape. "Leona," Amelia's voice broke. "It's true. Edward is your father." Gasps rippled louder, scandalized murmurs swelling. Some guests leaned in with fascination. Others frowned at the intrusion of family drama into a business gala. Leona's ears roared with the storm of noise. She turned to Edward, the powerful man, eyes brimming with emotion, then back to Amelia, the mother who had sacrificed everything, two poles of a truth too heavy to bear. "Why? Why did you both keep this from me?" The question tore out, trembling with rage and grief alike. Amelia reached forward, but Leona pulled back. "I need air. I have to go." She spun and rushed toward the doors. Amelia chased after her. Edward tried to follow, but was immediately engulfed by reporters and guests firing questions from every side. "Mr. Whitmore, do you confirm this claim? Is she truly your hidden daughter? Mrs. Okafor, why keep the secret for 18 years? Move, you have no right," Amelia cried as she shoved through. But cameras, microphones, and merciless flashes had already turned their most private moment into spectacle for the world. The press needed less than a day to turn the gala into a storm. Within hours of Leona fleeing Royal Lancaster Hall, online headlines screamed across every news site. Edward Whitmore admits to a secret daughter hidden for 18 years. Young entrepreneur Amelia Okafor, brilliant prodigy or illegitimate heiress. The Whitmore empire's secret, a forbidden love with an immigrant student. Blurry photos spread like wildfire. Edward's face was overcome with emotion. Amelia was trying to pull her daughter away from the crowd, and Leona was pale and stunned. Grainy phone videos circulated, accompanied by thousands of comments. Some expressed sympathy, others mocked. Many judged Amelia as a woman who schemed for advantage, while Leona was branded the lucky child cashing in on the Whitmore name. Amelia hardly slept that night. After catching up to Leona in the lobby, she had held her tight and dragged her away in panic. They took a taxi back to their small flat. Through the ride, Leona said nothing. Her face was ashen, her eyes fixed on the window. Amelia tried to speak, but couldn't find where to begin. When they arrived home, Leona entered her room and locked the door. The click of the bolt pierced Amelia's heart. She sank onto the sofa, face in her hands. 18 years, she had shielded her daughter from Edward's world, and in a single moment, everything collapsed. The next morning, pounding at the door jolted her awake. She opened it blinded by flashes. A forest of reporters shoved microphones at her. "Mrs. Okafor, why hide the truth? Did you raise her in secret just to weaponize her now? Will you sue for inheritance?" Amelia slammed the door shut, chest heaving. But moments later, the phone began buzzing non-stop. Her restaurant boss. "I'm sorry we can't keep you on. This publicity doesn't fit our brand." Her cleaning agency. "Clients don't want to be associated with scandal." Within one day, she had lost both jobs. Leona fared no better. Her inbox overflowed. 3 contracts were cancelled at once to avoid media complications. People who once praised her now sneered online. Didn't she get here thanks to Whitmore connections? No wonder she was chosen for the gala. Leona sat before her laptop, tears falling onto the keyboard. Amelia wrapped her arms around her, but her daughter remained rigid, whispering, "Mama, why didn't you tell me? At least I could have been ready." Amelia's throat closed. She could only repeat, "I'm sorry. I only wanted to protect you." The days grew worse. Reporters camped outside their building, cameras poised. Neighbors whispered. Some looked at Amelia with pity, others with disdain as if she had dragged shame into their street. Edward faced his own reckoning. The Whitmore Holdings Board convened an emergency session. Some directors feared a scandal would sink the stock and sabotage global deals. Edward sat silent as accusations flew, but in his mind, he saw only Leona fleeing, terrified. Afterward, Charlotte Harrington, his fiancée, stormed into his office, face like ice. "You've ruined everything," she said, voice cutting. "My family, our partners, high society. You think they'll accept an illegitimate child paraded in public, and you confessed in front of hundreds? This is humiliation." Edward met her gaze, voice calm but firm. "If it's humiliation, I accept it. I will never deny my daughter." Charlotte froze, then laughed coldly. "Then we're finished. The engagement is over. I will not tie my family to this disgrace." Her heels clattered down the corridor as she left. Edward didn't stop her. For the first time in years, he felt oddly lighter. But that lightness was quickly buried by dread. He knew he had made a grave mistake, blurting the truth in public. He should have approached Leona privately, spoken with Amelia, and revealed it carefully. Instead, his heart had drowned out reason. Now Amelia and Leona were the ones paying for it. One evening, Edward went to their flat. Reporters swarmed, shouting, but he ignored them, pounding on the door. "Amelia, Leona, please, hear me." The door cracked open. Amelia stood there, gaunt, eyes red-rimmed. "Why are you here? Haven't you done enough? You turned our lives into hell in one night." Edward faltered. I'm sorry. I couldn't stop myself. When I saw her, I couldn't keep pretending." "Amelia, I searched for you for 18 years. I just wanted what?" Amelia snapped, voice raw. "To make amends? To play father? Do you know what she's endured this week? The world is now questioning years of hard work and her reputation. Because of you." Behind her, Leona appeared, eyes blazing with hurt. If you're really my father, where were you when I needed one? When I was sick? When I was bullied? When Mama worked 3 jobs to feed me, where were you? Edward felt his heart tear open. He stepped forward, reaching for her hand, but Leona recoiled. "Leave," she whispered. "I don't need you. I have Mama." The door slammed shut. Edward stood frozen, swallowed by the swarm of reporters. Cameras flashed, voices barked questions, but he heard nothing. Only one sentence echoed in his mind: "I don't need you." That night, Amelia sat by her daughter's bed, stroking her hair as she sobbed. "My love," she whispered, "I know this feels like a nightmare, but I promise we'll survive, just as we always have." In their cramped flat, mother and daughter clung to each other, while outside, the world dissected their truth into fragments, feeding its endless hunger for scandal. 3 weeks after the gala, Amelia's tiny flat resembled a besieged fortress. When mother and daughter peeked through the curtains each morning, shadows loomed outside reporters, photographers, even gawkers. Cameras and microphones are ready, waiting to pounce on an exclusive. Amelia no longer opened the door to anyone unannounced, but that also meant what few job opportunities remained slipped away. Once, she showed up for an interview for a small office job. The manager frowned at her and said, "I'm sorry. We saw you in the papers this morning. The company doesn't want trouble. We can't hire you." Amelia forced a polite smile, but tears streamed once she turned away. Every step home felt like dragging a mountain. Leona Farid, no better. 3 major contracts had been cancelled, and 2 others were suspended. Each new email made her heart race not from hope, but dread of another blow. At school, friends split in 2. Some defended her, others whispered that she's just a Whitmore in disguise. One evening, she collapsed before her laptop, spreadsheets glowing red with losses. "Mama, I don't know what to do anymore. Everything I built. Now they say it's only because of him. They don't believe I did it myself." Amelia sat beside her, gripping her hand. "Leona, you built it with your mind and your will. No one can take that truth away." But Leona pulled back, eyes blazing with pain. "They already have. They've made me doubt myself. Do you know the worst part? A part of me is starting to think they're right." Amelia froze. She longed to hold her, but the invisible wall between them grew thicker. Days later, the financial strain became dire. Amelia's meager savings ran dry. Bills piled up. One morning, she found a paper stuck to their door. Eviction notice: 2 weeks to pay overdue rent or vacate the property. She sank onto the steps, the paper trembling in her hand. She had fought to give her daughter at least a roof for 18 years. Now even that was slipping. That afternoon, Edward appeared. He pushed through the crowd of reporters and knocked. Amelia reluctantly opened the door, her face hollow. "I know you don't want to see me, but please listen," Edward rasped. "I can help. I can cover the rent, get you stable work, and support Leona's firm. I have the resources." "No," Amelia snapped, eyes blazing. "We don't need your pity. I raised her for 18 years without a penny from you, and now you think you can throw money at us to erase it all?" Edward faltered. He wanted to say it wasn't pity, it was responsibility. But in her tear-rimmed eyes, he saw that any excuse would only deepen her fury. At that moment, Leona emerged. She faced him, voice cold. "Can you stop my company from collapsing? Can you erase every cruel word online? Can you give me back 18 years without a father?" Edward bowed his head. "No, but I want to be here, if you'll let me." Leona shook her head, tears spilling. "I don't know if I can forgive you. My mother has always been here. You're just a stranger." She turned away, retreating into her room. Amelia glared at Edward. "Do you see? Your recklessness destroyed everything. If you have any conscience left, leave us alone." The door slammed shut, leaving Edward alone in the corridor. He stood there for a long time, until a reporter shoved a microphone at him. "Mr. Whitmore, will you publicly support them financially?" He gave no reply, only walked away, his figure heavy with defeat. Inside, Amelia sat beside her daughter, who wept into her hands. Stroking Leona's hair, she whispered, "My love, We will survive, just as we always have. We don't need anyone else. But even Amelia knew this time was different. The storm was too vast. They were too tired, and unless a way out appeared, everything they had left would crumble. The flat was so silent that the ticking clock seemed deafening. Amelia sat by the window, staring out at the damp courtyard. Bills were stacked high on the table, and the eviction notice was like a knife against her eyes. Across the room, Leona sat before her laptop, screen open but untouched. The weight of exhaustion swallowed both mother and daughter. A knock broke the silence. Amelia stiffened, fearing more reporters, but when she cracked the door, she saw Ruth Ndlovu, her closest friend since university, who had carried Leona during Amelia's belated graduation. Ruth entered, carrying a basket of food and an unflinching gaze. "Enough," Ruth said, setting the bag down. "You two look like you've lost the world. But I don't believe that. I know Amelia Okafor never quits, and I know Leona carries the strength of both her parents." Leona lowered her eyes, lips pressed tight. Amelia sighed. "Ruth, everything's gone too far. No jobs, no rent, her company in ruins. The press has killed every hope." Ruth crossed her arms. "Yes, but you still have each other. And one more thing. Him, Edward Whitmore." Amelia's face hardened. "Don't speak his name. He's the source of our pain." "Perhaps," Ruth said calmly. "But he could also help you rise if he proves he's truly changed. The issue isn't money. It's whether he can show he deserves a place." Leona looked up, eyes red. "But how can I trust him? He abandoned us once. He stormed back like a hurricane, shattering everything we built. Am I just opening the door for another betrayal if I forgive him?" Ruth placed a hand on her shoulder. "You have every right to be angry, to doubt. But forgiveness isn't for him, it's for you. Holding on to hate only chains you. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means allowing yourself to keep living." Her words lingered in the room, leaving both Amelia and Leona silent. The next day, Ruth arranged a discreet meeting in a quiet cafe on the city's edge, away from reporters. Amelia agreed reluctantly only because Leona said yes. Edward arrived, not in a tuxedo, but in a plain sweater and simple shirt. He looked worn, with shadows under his eyes, but when he saw Leona, something bright and unshakable lit his gaze. They sat, silence heavy for minutes, until Edward finally spoke. "I'm sorry," he began, voice raw. "Sorry for the 18 years of absence. Sorry for turning your proudest night into a scandal. There are no words to excuse it. I'm not here to beg instant forgiveness. I only ask for one chance to prove I can be different." Leona folded her arms, voice cold. "How will you prove that? With money? I don't want it." Edward shook his head. "No, I know you don't. I want to build together not with the Whitmore name, but with what we believe in." He slid a thin folder across the table. "This is a draft for a fund supporting immigrant students and single mothers inspired by Amelia and you. I've been working on it for months, before the gala. If you agree, the fund will run independently and be overseen by a council where you have a voice. I'll only stand behind it." Amelia's heart stirred as she stared at the papers. Leona picked them up, flipping through. Clear plans, transparent budgets, no trace of empty showmanship. "You did this because of us?" she asked softly. Edward nodded. "Because I saw how you fought to survive. I don't want others to stand alone the way you did." Silence pressed down again. Finally, Amelia sighed. "Edward, do you know the hardest part? It isn't money. It isn't reputation. It's trust. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." Edward met her gaze steadily. "I understand. Trust must be rebuilt, one day at a time. If it takes my whole life, I'll give it." Leona turned away, tears streaming. "I don't know if I'm ready to call you father, but I'm willing to give you a chance." Edward closed his eyes, as if released from a lifelong weight. In the months that followed, change came slowly but surely. The fund launched, with Leona as its face. She stood before the press, not as Whitmore's illegitimate daughter, but as a young leader shaping the future. Her consulting firm regained credibility, bolstered by the values she embodied, now proven beyond question. Amelia found new work as program coordinator within the fund itself. She used her expertise to serve her community for the first time, rather than scraping by with menial jobs. Edward did not intrude, did not command. He appeared when invited, withdrew when needed, proving himself with quiet persistence. He joined late-night work sessions with Leona, listened to Amelia's counsel, and was no longer the sole decision-maker. One summer evening, they sat together on a park bench. Leona looked at the two adults beside her, a faint smile on her lips. "Mama, I think I'm ready." Amelia turned. "Ready for what?" Leona took a breath. "Ready to call him father." Edward froze, eyes filling. He bent forward, whispering, "Thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance." They sat, 3 hands clasped, as the sun sank behind the city skyline, golden light spreading wide. It was not a perfect ending, but a new beginning born from ruin, forgiveness, and the choice to love rather than hate.